So we'll start with a quick Jai Radha Madhav, and we'll go from there. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tera Vanachari Yamuna Tera Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Guru Deva, Guru Deva, Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva. Nitai Gora Hariva, 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 Nitai Gora Hariva. Hi Nam Sankirtan. So now, Hare Krishna, everybody. Thank you for coming. I thank also organizers for giving me the opportunity to speak and purify myself. As we talk about Krishna, we also get purified. Oh, we get purified. Everyone can hear me fine? Okay. Oh, it's not better. Hare Krishna. This is better. Okay. So before we start, we'll just say some invocation prayers and then we can get started. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamcha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvetam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitana Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschata Desha Tarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, everybody. I hope everyone is doing well. Are there any new people here? People here for the first time? Okay. That's okay. So I'll just give a brief introduction to why we're discussing this topic. The topic of today's discussion will be the 5 ways to connect to Krishna. There's a verse on the screen. We'll get to that a little bit later. But essentially, we know that Krishna is God, and that's great for him. But what about us? We have to connect to Krishna in some way. We are all his parts and parcels. We're all called souls, and Krishna is the super soul. And we have minute qualities of Krishna. And one of the qualities of Krishna is independence. It's said that he just does whatever he wants. He's not bound to rules or regulations. For us, if I drop an apple, it'll fall on the ground. But if Krishna wants to make the apple go up, it can happen. It can go up. He is not bound by any rules, any material laws, anything like that. And because we are parts and parcels of him, we have minute qualities that he has. So we also have minute independence. But our independence isn't just whatever we want. We only have independence on one factor. And that factor is if we want to come to Krishna or not. And first of all, we have to come to Krishna because all of us are looking for happiness. And as we see in our Hare Krishna Mahamantra, we say Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Rama means the source of ultimate pleasure, of unlimited pleasure. It is very, very pleasing. So as we increase our devotion to Lord Krishna, and Lord Rama is the same as Lord Krishna, then we also fulfill our needs for happiness. So the only way for happiness is to go to Krishna. So that means we have to fulfill our independence. We have to use our independence to get to Krishna. So the question then becomes, how do we use our independence? So the way we use our independence is by the process of devotional service, or cultivating a relationship with Krishna. And then we have to understand what are the facets of devotional service. In the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, we have a book called The Nectar of Devotion. In that book, there's 64 ways you can practice bhakti. They're called angas, or limbs of bhakti, limbs of devotional service. But 64 is a lot, so it's condensed down to 5 for us. So we'll discuss those 5. It's also condensed from 5 to 1. It doesn't go from 1 any lower, but it's condensed from 5 to 1. I'm sure after we go through them all, you can figure out which one of these are the other one that's like most important. And I'll say it as well. But yeah, we can go through the verse for today, which is the 5 main ways, the 5 most important limbs of devotional service. This verse is from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, one of our scriptures. The Madhya Lila, it's the 22nd chapter and the 128th verse. It's also on the screen, so you don't have to pull it up on your phone. But the context is, this is a discussion between Sanatana Goswami, one of our 6 Goswamis, and Lord Chaitanya, who's none other than Lord Krishna. And Sanatana Goswami is asking Lord Chaitanya lots of questions about the process of devotional service. Okay, so we've established who we are, we need to get to Krishna. Now, how do we get to Krishna? So he wants to know all the details that are involved in devotional service. And Lord Chaitanya outlined first those 64 limbs of bhakti, all those 64 different processes. And this verse, he outlined the 5 most important parts of bhakti. So we'll go through it. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Haribol. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Radha Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. So we'll recite the verse. I think it's a fun verse to say, so that's why we're doing it. Okay. Sadhu Sangha Nama Kirtan Bhagavat Shavan Mathura Vasa Shri Murtira Shradaya Sevan. That's the verse. Does anyone want to try it, saying it on their own? Sadhu Sangha Nama Kirtan Bhagavan Sarvan Bhagavat Shavan Mathura Vasa Shri Murtira Shradaya Sevan. Thank you. One more person, maybe? Okay, so yeah, this is sometimes like verses have very complex sentence structure. This is a very simple verse. Many of you, if you've come to a class like this before, you probably already know what all the words mean because it's very, very straightforward in terms of translation. I just wanted to bring it up just to show that it's coming from the source. We'll do the word by word, which will be the structure of the rest of the discussion. Sadhu Sangha. Sadhu Sangha. Association with devotees. Nama Kirtana. Chanting the holy name. Bhagavat Shravana. Hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. Mathura Vasa. Living at Mathura. Shri Murtira Shradaya Sevan. Worshipping the deity with faith and veneration. Translation by our founder Acharya, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada ki. One should associate with devotees, chant the holy name of the Lord, hear Srimad Bhagavatam, reside at Mathura, and worship the deity with faith and veneration. So yeah, there's five different items, namely association, chanting, hearing, residing in a holy place, and serving the deity. So we'll discuss all 5 of these ways in detail. Along the way, we'll discuss the definition of each of these, the importance of that, how we apply that in our own lives, and what are some examples of that happening. So the first one is sadhu sangha. So does anyone have a definition of sadhu sangha? Does anyone want to say anything just right off the bat? Right, yeah, so association of devotees that's the direct translation. So yeah, that's the immediate definition. But now we have to ask ourselves, what association with devotees? Is it just physical proximity? If I'm sitting next to a devotee and just not talking to them and being awkward about it, is it sadhu sangha? Or if I'm talking to a devotee about things that are not necessarily related to Krishna, it's still sadhu sangha. So that's the key question. It's not just about who you're associating with, or where you're with, or like who you're next to, or all that. It's the quality of that association that matters. What you're doing with the time that you spend with. That's part of the application. But we first should go through the importance. Most people here have heard, have read or know the details of the Ramayana, correct? Does everyone know who Dvivida was? Yeah. So Dvivida was, I think it's described he was either like he was a gorilla or some sort of monkey um, monkey species, and it was described he was a very very faithful servant of the Lord. But does anyone know what happened to him in Krishna Lila? So this is a couple of million years later. Balaram killed him. The reason is because he became demoniac. He was this wonderful servitor of Lord Ram. He was always doing things that made sure that made Ram be pleased and all of that stuff. And then he turned bad. Does anybody know why he turned bad? Like, yes. So he associated with a demon called Narakasur, who actually associated with a demon called Banasur, I believe. And because he spent so much time with this Narakasur, he eventually developed lots of bad qualities. Now, there's a flip side of this. I was also discussing Narad Muni. He was just he was like a son of a servant. But however, I think during the Chaturmasya period, a bunch of sages, a bunch of really saintly people came to his house. And because he associated with them, he developed their qualities. So this is not like, oh, this is just to penalize you. But it can be a good or bad thing. If you have good association, good stuff will happen. If you have bad association, bad stuff will happen. So the importance of this is that we become who we are. There's a saying, you are 1/5 of each of the 5 people you're closest with. So you develop the qualities of other people. So if we associate with devotees, then we develop the qualities needed to get closer to Krishna. For example, there's lots of qualities that devotees have, such as humility, tolerance, mercy, compassion, kindness, surrender to Krishna, strong faith in Krishna, all of these qualities that devotees have that we may not necessarily have. However, if we associate with devotees, that spreads in the atmosphere, right? Like I think we all have experience that maybe we don't feel inspired in a kirtan, but then the kirtan year is really, really inspiring, and people around us are singing really strongly, and eventually we get inspired. Has anyone felt this experience? Most people, right? That's because of the association of devotees. So even if you don't have the inspiration to get closer to Krishna, if you're with other people who do, and as long as you know that you have to do that, even if you're not feeling it, then if you're with other people who do feel it, then you'll eventually feel that. So this association is very, very important. So now we discuss an application of association. So there's a couple of avenues we could go on discussing how we should associate. I'll first start with Narad Muni. Do most people know who Dhruva Maharaj is? So Dhruva Maharaj was a 5-year-old boy. Long story short, he got mad at his dad and he went to the forest. And he wanted to get a kingdom bigger than his father's. And he asked Narad Muni, like either help me or leave, basically. Because Narad Muni was like, oh, just go back, don't get angry. But he was like, no, I want to actually do this, like either help me or get out of the way. So anyways, Narad Muni described then the principle of association. There's 3 types of association. Association with those who are senior to you, those who are equal to you, those who are junior to you. This is association anywhere. Like you have to be in one of these 3 categories. Everyone is either higher than you, the same as you, or lower than you. So from a spiritual perspective, we associate with these 3 people differently. So for the highest, so if we're associating with someone who is more advanced than us, who's practicing longer than us, who's closer to Krishna than us, who's feels more of a connection with Krishna, then we have to ask them questions on how we can become like them, how we can advance, what are they doing that is practical, what do we have to do, how can we fit those things in. We should ask them questions so we can figure out what to do. If we are associating with someone who's equal to us, then we can discuss about Krishna. We should always, the main part of association is that it gets us closer to Krishna. And one wonderful way to get us closer to Krishna, and I'll talk about this later, is hearing about Krishna. So if we're discussing with another person about Krishna, so either his like form, his name, his pastimes, what pastimes you like, or even about your own spiritual progress, like, oh, my japa has not been the best, I'm reading this, I've been listening to this lecture. If we discuss about that, we can do that with people who are on similar levels to us in association. So if we're someone who's maybe started at the same time, we're both at the same level of spiritual progress, we can discuss with each other about our own spiritual progress, discuss about Krishna. We can converse on those topics. So that's what we should do there. And if we're associating with those who are junior to us, then it's like the reverse of the first one. We're on the giving end of that. They will ask us questions. So how did you get here? How did you get here? What should I do in order to increase my round? What should I do in order to increase my reading? Why don't I have taste for reading? So on and so forth. And that's your responsibility to answer. So the idea is you're inquisitive to the senior one, you're friendly with the equal one, and you're compassionate to the junior one. So that's one way we can go through association. But then also, Rupa Goswami, actually Sanatana Goswami, the person who's hearing this verse, his brother, wrote a book called Nectar of Instruction. If you don't have it, I strongly encourage you to get it. It's actually called Upadesh Amrita, but it's translated as Nectar of Instruction. And there's actually two verses that discuss mainly about association. The first verse describes the 6 types of dealings between devotees. So the 6 types are giving gifts and receiving gifts, inquiring confidentially and answering confidentially, and the last one, eating and giving prasad, which I'm sure we all like. So yeah, I mean, obviously we love gifts, and we obviously also like prasad, but the most important one, many devotees said, is the second one. The third and fourth one, which is you ask devotees confidentially and you get answers confidentially. The important part is confidentially, so you don't feel like you have to hide things. You shouldn't be doing this everywhere. You're doing it with one trusted individual where you can put everything on the table, say, oh, here's the issues that I'm having in my spiritual life, and you don't have fear on that. So you can be very honest. But you should be asking others how you can advance, and then also you should be answering to others how they can advance as well. But that relationship, the core part of association is if you were able to advance, if you get closer to Krishna through that association. There's a story of a kid in the Vrindavan Gurukul. The way Vrindavan Gurukul works, I believe, is they spend 4 days in Vrindavan, at least on Sundays, some weeks, and then 3 days they go to Delhi and they go do stuff. And one boy was going to Delhi that weekend, and his teacher said, "Oh, don't just make sure you stay like Krishna conscious. Make sure you're doing like more Krishna activities." And over the weekend, I don't exactly remember what it was. I don't know. Like the boy went and watched something or did something that wasn't related to Krishna. And so the boy came back the next week, and his teacher asked, "Oh, what did you do?" And he was like, "Oh, I went around. I just did all these things." And this teacher asked, "Oh, I told you not to do this." And he said, and the boy said, "Yes, but I was doing it with my friends, so I was in the association of devotees." That's not exactly the practical application. We can't just do anything because we're near devotees. We have to make our association meaningful. And the way we make our association meaningful is through making sure Krishna's in the center of our relationships, constantly asking each other, how are you advancing in Krishna consciousness? What's working for you? How is your japa going? This, so on and so forth. What parts of Krishna Lila do you like? What are you reading right now? What services do you want to take up? And so on. As far as examples for association, I already discussed Narada Muni. I already discussed Divida, that's the negative one. But yeah, so again, Narada Muni, he was the son of a servant. But the one benediction is that he every year for 4 months, a bunch of sadhus would come to his house, and he would just sit with them, he would listen to them, he would associate with them, and through that association, he was able to completely surrender. He became a pure devotee, and now he's traveling all over the universe preaching. So that's a wonderful example of spiritual success, just because of the association of devotees. It starts with that. We can be like, again, we have to do things off that association, but that's one of the main limbs of devotional service. Some devotees will say it's one of the most important, because if you're near devotees, they'll inspire you to do the other ones. So does anyone have questions or comments on sadhu sangha? We can continue. I don't say anything. Well, we'll continue. So the next one is the next limb of bhakti is nama kirtana. So this is the one that we condensed down to 1. So we have 64 to 5 to 1. This is the one. Don't go down from here, but it's 1. So nama kirtana. The word nam means the name, and kirtana means to chant. So with the direct translation is chanting the holy name of the Lord. So that's either Krishna, Rama, Nishima, Vishnu, the Vishnu Sahasranam. That's nam kirtana. For us in the Krishna consciousness movement, we do 2 main types of Nam Kirtan. The first is this Sankirtan, which if you were here earlier, you heard. We have some music, and we're all singing loudly, we're chanting loudly, that is Kirtan. And the second type is called Japa. Most of us have Japa beads, where we chant 100, it's 108 beads, and we chant this mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. We chant it once per bead. And then some do 1 round, 4 rounds, 8 rounds, 16 rounds. Some do like 64 rounds. But those are the 2 ways we chant. So we can either chant loudly or we can chant softly. there is a wonderful devotee. His name is Haridas Thakur. He's called the Namacharya. Acharya means teacher, and Nama means the holy name. So he is the teacher of the holy name. And he chanted 192 of these rounds every day. It takes about like 18, 19, 20 hours. So that shows that he is really connected in the taste of the name. So now we know what chanting the holy name is, but now we have to understand why we are chanting. So the first thing we have to understand about Krishna and his holy name is that they are non-different. The example is given. If you say mango, 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 there's no mango. If you say water, 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 you're not fully quenched. However, the reason that is because those are material. They're on a lower truth. Yes, it's true. Like water does exist, mangoes do exist, but they don't have the full potency. That doesn't mean like the name of a mango is equivalent to a mango itself. However, Krishna isn't under this material world. We already discussed his independence. He is above this. He's above all material truth, material logic. He's on a spiritual level, and because of that, his name is non-different from him himself. So when you say Krishna, it's not you're just calling out to Krishna. Krishna is actually present on your tongue. This doesn't mean you say Krishna and you stick out your tongue and you see like a little Krishna on your tongue. But yeah, you have to understand that Krishna is present within you when you chant the holy name. Krishna enters your ears. Krishna enters there. So when we understand that, we can really clearly see how when we chant this holy name, even if it feels repetitive, we're actually connecting with Krishna. Krishna is present when we're chanting this holy name. It's described Abhinnatvami Namina. Krishna is non-different from his name. So when we chant, we experience that. But the reason why we stress the holy name is that it's the easiest mode of going back to Krishna, getting out of this material world and reconnecting with Krishna in this age. So there's four ages, 4 yugas. The first is Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapar Yuga, and now we're in Kali Yuga. It gets progressively worse through the 4 ages. So we have Satya Yuga, everything's really nice there. So the way that they get to Krishna is through meditation and austerity. Then we have Treta Yuga. It's a little bit more degraded. It's not as pure as Satya Yuga, but it's still pretty good. And in that age, they do a lot of yajna. They do a lot of fire sacrifices. They're really expensive, lots of ornate stuff. And then the next stage is Dwapar Yuga. It's starting to get a little bit more degraded, and it's starting to get a little more chaotic. And in that age, the method of process is worshiping the deities. We're doing that now as well, but the main method is in Dwapar Yuga is worshiping the deities. And in Kali Yuga, I don't think I need to tell you how degraded things are. You can just look outside. But this age is really hard to focus. It's really hard and some people are not like most energetic. People are sometimes misguided. We see all sorts of misinformation on the internet, but even on a more like people are misguided about what the goal of life is. And also there's no coordination. We don't have as much coordination needed to perform a yajna. Even for like smaller yajnas, it requires so many moving parts to be put in place. And for a big yajna that was needed, that was like done during Dwapar Yuga or Treta Yuga, that required a lot of coordination. We don't have that same coordination now. We don't have the focus to meditate. We may not have all the wealth in the world to worship the deities. So we have to get an easier method. And the Lord is so merciful that he just gives us his name. Prabhupada, our Srila Prabhupada, our Acharya says, you can chant this holy name anywhere. It's not like you chant the holy name, you chant Hare Krishna, and you have to pay a tax to the government, or you have to pay a fee to some private company. No. You can chant, and it doesn't cost anything. You can chant while you're walking, you can chant when you're driving, chant while you're working. You can always chant. There's nothing that can stop you from chanting. With that said, we usually do our japa and our kirtan. That doesn't mean that you just chant whenever, like inattentively and all that, and not chant your rounds. You still have to chant your rounds. You do your meditation, and you can participate in kirtan. Those are the application. But before we move on, I guess we can describe specific effects of the holy name. So we've described Lord Chaitanya. He is a form of Krishna, but he comes as a devotee, and he leaves behind 8 verses to describe as instructions to simplify it for all of us. It's interesting because he instructed all of his disciples to write a bunch of books, and then he wrote 8 verses. So he gives 8 verses. It's this succinct. It's all we need to know. And in that first verse, there is 7 benefits of chanting the holy name. It cleanses our heart. So if we have impurities in our heart, if we get angry, we get greedy, we get driven too much by desire, those things will prevent us from getting to Krishna. Because when we're trying to get to Krishna, we have to focus on him and not us. but we are conditioned to focus on us. But by chanting the holy name, we lose all of those impurities and we can get to Krishna. We can focus on Krishna more. The second effect is to stop the miseries of the material universe. I'm sure people would like that. It also spreads good fortune to everybody, not just to us, but anyone who hears it. And it's also the life and soul of all education. So it's the form of knowledge. Knowledge is important because it allows us to figure out what we should do. By chanting the holy name, we increase our determination to do the right thing. It's also expanding. It's ever expanding the ocean of bliss. The Sanskrit for that is Ananda Ambuddhi Vardhanam. Ananda means bliss. Ambuddhi means ocean, and Vardhanam means increasing. So it's always increasing. I don't know if you've ever been to like an ice cream shop, but you'll see that for one scoop, it'll maybe cost $3 for the scoop. But if you're gonna buy 2 scoops, it'll cost $5, and 3 scoops will cost $6. And I've always heard this thing like, why is this business so stupid? They should be doing $6 for 2 scoops and $9 for 3 scoops and so on. But the reason they do that is because they know after you've had your first scoop, ice cream is good, but it doesn't taste as good as the first scoop. So they have to lower the price because they know that if you pay $3 for the first scoop, you're gonna have to pay less for the second scoop. And the reason for that is because anything in this world, the happiness is diminishing. You do something the first time, you may enjoy it, but when you do it the second time, you don't enjoy it as much, right? I go back to the ice cream example. If it's a hot day outside, hot summer day, unlike this one, but it's a hot summer day outside and it's like 90 degrees, and you come home and you pick a scoop of ice cream, that first scoop is really good, but after that, it diminishes. This is contrary to what the holy name does. The holy name is increasing in happiness. Anything material is decreasing in happiness, but the holy name is increasing in happiness. When you chant the holy name, your happiness increases. It's not like, oh, I chanted, I was happy today, but tomorrow it'll just get boring. No, because it's the spiritual nature. It's not a material thing. It's spiritual. The happiness increases. So whenever we chant, we get more and more happy because we're remembering Krishna more and more. The last couple of effects is it gives a cooling effect to everyone. Maybe that's why it's cold outside because we've been chanting the holy name. But yeah, so you're cooler. You don't stress out as much. You're not facing the pangs of material suffering, and it enables one a tasteful nectar at every step. So it makes you very happy. It allows you get a very strong connection to the holy name, a strong connection to Krishna, and you're very happy. As far as application is concerned, we discussed kirtan and japa. That's the best way to do that. But also, even while you're walking, even while you're on the bus, you can get out a counter. You just chant without a counter. Just chant Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. You can keep doing this a lot. So that's the application. And the best example about the potency of this holy name is the story of Ajamil. It's described that Ajamil, this is an ancient story from the Puranas. Ajamil he was grown up in a very good family. He had a lot of Brahminical traits to him. He was very cultured. And one time he was very close to Krishna. And one time he went to the forest to get flowers so that he could offer it to Krishna. And when he came back, he saw like a man and a woman enjoying one another. And with that, he got attracted. And unfortunately, he fell down and he left this process of devotional service that he was practicing since childhood because he was so captivated by that. And he married another woman, and he left he was already married, so he left that. And he just started, he was described that he did a lot of bad things to get money. He would cheat, he would rob, he would do all of these bad things. But he also had 10 children. One of them he had in a very old age. But the last child was named Narayan. Even in India, it's very common that they name like kids after the holy name of the Lord. Even in America, I've seen kids named like Jesus or Jesus. So yeah, it's very common sometimes to name your kid after God. So that's what he did. And at the time of death, the Yamadutas, the agents of death, were coming to take him away. And he was really scared. He was like, oh, I'm about to die. So he calls for his son, whose name is Narayan, the name of the Lord. And even though he was not calling for Krishna, he was calling for something completely different. He didn't have any knowledge of Krishna, none of that. He was calling for his son. But because he chanted Narayana, there were 4 other personalities that showed up. And those are the 4 agents of Krishna. And they said, no, you can't. They told this agent of death, you can't take him away. He's not sinful anymore. He chanted this holy name, and it removed all the sins that he committed. So that started that. And actually, he heard this discussion between the Vishnudutas, the agents of Krishna and then the Yamadutas, the agents of death, this discussion about the power of the holy name. And eventually he was able to get delivered. He meditated more, and eventually he became a pure devotee. So it shows that whatever we do, whenever you chant the holy name, that gets us closer to Krishna. And it's really easy. Again, you don't have to pay a tax or any fee on chanting the holy name. You just have to chant. It's very simple. So the next, so we finished limb 2. Also, this is the one that condenses onto one. I think I already said that, but this is the most important one. So now we'll go to the third one, which is Bhagavat Shravan. Anyone want to guess what the definition of Bhagavat Shravan is? Yeah, so Shravanam Saturdays, hearing the Bhagavatam. Yeah, so Shravanam Saturdays is a good feature of that, is when we hear the Bhagavatam. Shravanam doesn't just refer to like using your ears. Also, if you read Srila Prabhupada's books, that's also a form of hearing. And also the word Bhagavata, that refers to the Srimad Bhagavatam, but we also have books like the Bhagavad Gita and the Chaitanya Charitamrita. That doesn't mean, like, he's not saying, or Lord Chaitanya is not saying, oh, you only have to read the Bhagavatam. You can also read Chaitanya Charitamrita and Bhagavad Gita. It's actually described that the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna gives a lot of instruction. I think most people are familiar with the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna instructs Arjuna on the battlefield and describes all the ways that you can connect to Krishna, the best ways to connect to Krishna, and so on. But he just kind of says it very theoretically, and then it's described that the Bhagavatam is just the other side of the same coin. It's filled with stories about how we can apply the principles that were discussed in the Bhagavad Gita. So they're just two sides of the same coin. We should listen to the Srimad Bhagavatam. We can read the Srimad Bhagavatam, hear the Srimad Bhagavatam, and any scriptures related to Lord Krishna. So we've defined the Bhagavat Shravan. So now we have to find the importance of Bhagavat Shravan. The main importance is that we learn about Krishna, and we're more convinced that we should serve him. It's said that we have to pay attention in class. If I'm in chemistry class, I need to learn what I need to do so I can pass the exam. By hearing about chemistry, maybe I'm like, oh, this is really interesting. Let me go study on it my own. That doesn't usually happen, but that's just an example. But yeah, so if we hear about Krishna, we can hear about his number one is opulence. We can say, oh, he's the supreme personality of Godhead. He's infinite. He has all this power, all this potency that attracts him. More importantly, if we hear about his sweetness, so we hear all the pastimes he had in Vrindavan. Oh, look how he's dealing with his mother. Look how he's dealing with his friends. Look how he's dealing with all his like servants. And we see like maybe like pastimes of Lord Ram. Look how wonderful Lord Ram is treating his parents. Look how like dharmic he is. We see all these. We can hear these pastimes. We can hear about the qualities of Krishna. Oh, look how merciful he is. Look how kind and respectful he is. We can hear about the form of Krishna. Look how beautiful he is. He's holding this flute. He looks like a moon cloud. That's the color he is. He has a really, really beautiful dhoti, a really beautiful yellow dhoti. And by hearing all of these things, we get attracted to Krishna. We get brought closer to Krishna. So that's the importance of it. Another effective hearing is that we get purified. So another thing about Srila Prabhupada is that he was from India, a state called West Bengal, and he came here at the age of 69. He came in 1965. That was during the hippie movement, but this was before a lot of Indians and other immigrants came into the United States. So the point I'm trying to make is that his accent was a very strong accent, and there wasn't a lot of exposure to that accent or any accents really at that time in America. So when students came, when devotees came, like new people came, they couldn't understand Srila Prabhupada's accent completely. They maybe could pick up a couple of words, but his accent was so different for them, they couldn't understand everything they were saying. But Srila Prabhupada said that they still got purified. Because even if we don't understand what about the Krishna, we don't understand every word that the speaker is saying, just because we're hearing about Krishna, Krishna enters our ears and our heart and purifies us that way. So even though all the many Westerners who Srila Prabhupada was preaching to didn't understand everything he was saying because of his accent, that didn't matter because it's still purified. And eventually we can see all these devotees all around the world, even now they are in their later stages of life, 70, 75, 80, and they're still doing so much to please Lord Krishna, to serve Lord Krishna, to give Krishna to others. So even though they couldn't maybe understand every word that Srila Prabhupada said, they still got the potency of it just by hearing. And so the first feature of hearing is we get attracted to Krishna. The second is we get purified just by that coming into our heart. Krishna removes all of those all of those undesirable qualities. One of our acharyas, one of our teachers in our lineage, Bhakti Rahul Thakur, says that Krishna kills a lot of demons in his Vrindavan Lila. He kills Putana, he kills Shakasura, he kills Agasura, he kills so many different demons. And he says that each of these demons represents bad qualities. For example, Dhenukasura, the donkey demon, represents too much adherence to rules, like without knowing why we're following those rules. Kali, I believe, refers to envy. Another demon, Pralambasura, refers to lust, and so on and so forth. There's many different discussions. And it's just, and this Acharya Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that if you hear this pastime where Krishna kills a demon, so say Krishna doesn't kill Dhenukasura, but Balaram kills Dhenukasura. But anyways, if we hear that pastime about Dhenukasura being killed, then that pastime enters our heart. And whatever bad quality that demon represents, that bad quality in our heart gets gradually removed. That's a purifying aspect. And the final aspect of listening to Krishna, or listening to Krishna Katha, listening to Bhagavatam, is that we get spiritual knowledge. So what that means is not just information. So there's a difference between spiritual information and spiritual knowledge. Spiritual information is like how many verses you can quote. Okay, I can quote all these verses of the Bhagavad Gita. I can say all these different stories. I can say all this different stuff. That's not bad, but we need to focus on spiritual knowledge. And that's the firm conviction, the realization, the understanding of the principle and what we need to do when doing it. It's described as we hear like, oh, we need to chant the holy name. Okay, when we hear it more and more, we start to do it. That's knowledge. We hear, oh, we are servants of Lord Krishna. As we hear it more and more, we finally begin to believe it. That's knowledge. So by hearing, we can gradually cultivate spiritual knowledge. So as far, we've described three main parts of Bhagavad Shravan. And now we can go into the application. So there's two ways we can hear. So number one is reading Srila Prabhupada. So we have all these books here. If you haven't been here before, I encourage you to maybe take a couple of books home with you. They're really, really helpful. They describe Krishna very nicely, and they describe how to get to Krishna very nicely. So if we read these books that Prabhupada has given us, then we can get the same benefits from Bhagavad Shravan. And then also we can also hear lectures. So now it's the 21st century. We have YouTube, we have Facebook Live, we have ISKCON Desire. We have all these different databases of lectures that we can listen to. There's so many lectures, especially after COVID-19. There's so many programs that are happening on Zoom. So even if the speaker is in a different place, we can still listen to them. So we should dedicate time to it. It's best if we can dedicate 15 minutes. I'm gonna sit and listen to this lecture. I'm not gonna do anything else. I might take notes if that helps me. I'm gonna sit and do that. But even if we can't do that, we can also listen to lectures when we're cooking or cleaning or driving or anything. If we're listening to lectures when doing tasks that we can focus. We don't have to focus completely on the lecture, but we can put it in the background and hear it. So that's also a way that we can get attracted to Krishna. Even if we're not attentive all the time, it's better than not playing it at all, because there's a chance that we'll listen to a little bit and then we can get purified from that. As far as examples in Bhagavad Shravan, there's a few examples. One example is Rukmini Devi. So Rukmini Devi is one of the wives of Krishna. And the way she got married to Krishna is interesting. She was actually arranged marriage to a personality named Shishupal. Shishupal was very envious of Krishna. He's just in general not a good guy. And because of this, Rukmini didn't really want to get married to him. But she had heard a lot about Krishna. That was the only thing. She had heard so much about Krishna. She never seen Krishna, none of that. She just heard about his qualities. And she decided really strongly that she wanted to marry Krishna and not Shishupal. Her family was arranged marrying her to Shishupal, but she was, I want to marry Krishna. So essentially, because of this hearing, she has such a desire to go to Krishna that she actually writes a letter to Krishna. And then a Brahmana messenger goes, gives it to Krishna. The next day, the wedding was supposed to happen, I believe, either the next day or the day after. And Krishna takes Rukmini away with her will. He aligns with her desire and takes her and marries her off. So the reason she was able to do this, the reason she had this devotion to Krishna, this desire to get to Krishna, was just by hearing. Just by learning about Krishna, she had such a desire to go to him. That's a very wonderful example. So that is 3 out of 5. We have 5 minutes left. I'll do 2 more. These will go relatively quickly. So the first one is, the fourth one is Mathuravasi. Mathura is the place where Krishna was born, and Vasi means to live. So this means that we should live in a land of Mathura. But this is also a little confusing because obviously we're not in Mathura, and it doesn't make a lot of sense that the spiritual process would be dependent on living in a specific part of the world. And also we know like so many other dhams. Why is Mathura the only one? We know Rameshwar Dham, Mayapur Dham, Jagannathpur Dham, Sri Rangam, all these different holy places that we can go to. There's no need just to focus on Mathura. But even within Mathura, not everyone was a devotee. Kamsa was the king of Mathura, but he was a demon. Gaur Govinda Maharaj made this point very. One of the spiritual teachers in our movement, Gaur Govinda Maharaj, made this point very strongly. Devotees would come to him and say, "I want to live in Vrindavan. I want to live in Mathura." And he would respond to them saying, "Kamsa lived in Mathura, but he was a demon." So it's not just living in a specific place; it's having the Vrindavan, the Mathura consciousness. That's the key point. There was a speaker. I was in Detroit a couple months ago, and there was a traveling sannyasi. He was giving class. He was giving class actually on something similar to this. And in another book, these principles were described. And he's saying the book says that we need to live in a holy place like Vrindavan, Mayapur, or Detroit. So it's described that the geographical place is not what matters. It's our consciousness doing that. So we have to make whatever we live into a place like Vrindavan. We have to make the atmosphere Krishna conscious. So that's including all the other, inviting devotees to our house. That makes it Krishna conscious. There's a holy name playing in the background. It's like Prabhupada boxes you can buy. You plug them into the wall and they'll play. That also makes it atmosphere Krishna conscious. Another really wonderful way to make our atmosphere like Vrindavan. The word Vrindavan, Vrinda means Tulasi Devi and Van means forest. So Vrindavan is just the forest of Tulasi Devi. If you can have Tulasi Devi in your house, that also provides so much spiritual benefit. Tulasi Devi is very, very dear to Krishna. She's a plant, but she's very, very dear to Krishna because of her devotion to Krishna. So if we have that, we worship her, then she gives us her mercy and we can get closer to Krishna. And the importance of this is where we are and has a huge effect of our sadhana. If the place is not, if our atmosphere and environment aren't conducive for our practice of devotion service, we're not going to practice devotion service. But if we're in a place that is conducive to Krishna consciousness, like the holy dhams, but also like a place we make at home that's, if we intentionally make it like that, we can also become Krishna conscious. As far as the specific dham, it's also good to go there because you can go there and you can see, oh, Krishna did his Kaliya pastime on this tree. Oh, Krishna did this pastime here. Krishna did this pastime. Lochita did this pastime here. We can see that and visualize that, and that's also very spiritually recharging. So that's the application by living, associating with devotees, visiting the temple, having tulsi in your home. If we can try to go to the dham at least once a year. We don't have to fly to India though. That 2.5 hours away, we have New Vrindavan Dham. That Prabhupada built that. He organized that project. He said it's not different from Vrindavan. Just because it's in the United States doesn't mean it's not there. There's a speaker, his name is Radhesham Prabhu, and he describes that the 6 Goswamis, their instruction was to find holy places and re-excavate them in India. But Srila Prabhupada did the same thing, but in the West. So there was Vrindavan, and now there's New Vrindavan. There's Navadvip in I think San Francisco. Actually, yeah, there's Jagannath Puri, and San Francisco is New Jagannath Puri. So we have all these dhams here. So we can also visit those places. And just by being in that atmosphere, I'm sure many devotees who went to Vrindavan or Mayapur for Karthik can attest to this. By being in that atmosphere, we get surcharged with our devotional service. That's 4. So we're on number 5. I have like 3 minutes left. I'll speak to this. The last one is Shri Murtira Shraddhaya Sevan. So Shri Murtira means the deities, the form, the Lord in the form of deities. Shraddhaya means with faith, with love and veneration, and Sevana means to serve. So this is serving the deity with love and faith. In practice, this is a little bit more. This is one of the harder ones to practice because there's a lot of regulations. Because this form isn't different from Krishna; it's non-different from Krishna. Just like how the name is not different from Krishna, this deity form it's non-different from Krishna as well. The example for this in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it's described the pastime as Sakshi Gopal. I'll briefly describe it. Basically, there were 2 brahmanas. They traveled to Vrindavan. They lived in Vidyanagar, which is in the east of India. Vrindavan is like northwest of India. So they traveled, and there was an older brahmana who had a daughter who was about this age of the younger brahmana. And the older brahmana said to this younger brahmana, "You serve me so nicely. I'm fine if you want to marry my daughter." So they go back to this Vidyanagar village, And because this younger Brahmana was poor, the older Brahmana's family didn't like that and said, "Oh no, just say that we don't want her, like we don't want our daughter to go to this poor Brahmana. Could just tell this younger Brahmana that you didn't say it, or you just forget what you said." Um, but obviously he said it. But the important thing is he said it in front of the deity called Gopal, the Gopal deity in Vrindavan. So this younger Brahmana wanted to make sure that this older Brahmana's word was kept. So he went all the way back to Vrindavan. So it took 100 days on average. And he asked this deity, even though this deity was made of like seemingly material ingredients like clay or stone, he asked this deity, please come to Vidyanagar, testify so that everything can be cleared up. This older Brahmana's honor is not destroyed. And this deity, number one, this deity started speaking. And this deity said, this thing, so obviously we can see it's not an ordinary piece of metal, piece of stone, it's actually Krishna himself. And this deity started speaking, saying, I can't do that, I'm just a piece of stone. Like he said that. But this Brahmana said, you are non-different from Krishna, and you'll do anything for your devotees. So this younger Brahmana told this deity in the form of Gopal, the Gopal deity, to follow him. So this Gopal deity walked all the way from Vrindavan 100 days to Vidyanagar. And basically this deity testified for this older Brahmana. And then the younger Brahmana and this older Brahmana's daughter got married. But from that day on, the word in Sanskrit for witness is Sakshi. So that deity is called Sakshi Gopal, the deity who bore witness for that. I think sometimes it's like a saying, as God is my witness, I'm going to do something like this or that. My speculation that it came from this. But yeah, so yeah, Krishna is our witness. This story goes to show that the deity is Krishna himself. There's no difference between Krishna and the deity. And because when we are on the altar, we are directly dealing with Krishna, there's a lot of regulations. We have to be clean. We have to be in certain attire. We have to, if it's dark in the room, we have to make a noise outside so we're just walking in. We have to do a lot of different things because it's very, very particular. This is one of the more rule-based parts of our practice. However, it's very important because it allows us to visualize the form of the Lord. Obviously, the sound is very important, but just because by seeing the form of the Lord, we can get attracted. It's just like I remember I was hearing a lecture, and the speaker was saying, "Oh, you have this deity, you have this deity, and this deity gets different dresses every day. Just by remembering the dresses, you'll get a lot of spiritual benefits. You'll be able to remember Krishna." So this visualization of the deity, this form of the Lord, is very helpful for us. But also when we dress the deities, I never dress the deities, but I know devotees who have told me it's a very personal experience. You're basically dressing Krishna. The goal is you want to get connected to Krishna, you're going to get connected to deity service. So it's a very intimate process. So that's the importance of it. And then now we can go to the application. So there's two, because deity service is very, very exalted, and there's a lot of rules to it, we have to do a couple things before we can get on the altar and do deity service. We have to be initiated before we do that. That means we have to actually be twice initiated. We have to be chanting 16 rounds of this Hare Krishna Mahamantra daily, to follow 4 regular principles, namely no meat eating, no intoxication, no gambling, no illicit sex. And then finally, we have to pass an exam called the Bhakti Shastri exam to make sure we know what we're doing, we're learned in this process. But after we do that, and we get this second initiation, then we can go on the altar, perfect timing, and we can do arati, we can dress the deities, and we can get that closer relationship. I'm not first initiated either. I'm not second initiated either, but for the rest of us who aren't, we can still participate. By participating in the arati, by singing for Krishna, by doing all of that, yes, we're not touching Krishna, we're not directly interacting, but we're still pleasing him in the form of the deity. So just by participating in the arati, we can also be performing deity service. It's still a service. It's not as personal maybe, but we still get the same benefit just by chanting and looking at the deity. There's lots of examples of this. There's many devotees we know personally who advance greatly because of deity service. But also from the scriptures, we know Madhavendra Puri was very close to the deities. He had a deity in Vrindavan named Gopal. There was a deity he was also close to in a town called Remuna in East India called the Shirchor Gopinath deity. And actually, so the story is Madhavendra Puri lived in Vrindavan. His main deity was Gopal, but he was told to travel to Orissa to get some sandalwood because Gopal came in Madhavendra Puri's dream and he was feeling hot. But he stopped in this town of Remuna and saw this deity and saw that they were offering kheer to this deity. They were offering sweet rice. And he said, oh, I want to know how we make this sweet rice so I can make it for Gopal. I want to taste it. But like he couldn't say that obviously because it's a very formal temple environment. So anyways, they offered 8 pots to the deity, and then the offering happened. Mother and the Puri went outside. He found a place to sleep and everything like that. But when the pujari came back to get the pots, he only got 6 pots back. So there were 2 pots remaining. And this Gopinath deity told this pujari in a dream, oh, give these 2 pots to someone named Madhavendra Puri. So this pujari goes and finds Madhavendra Puri and says, these 2 pots are for you. And because this deity stole 2 pots of kheer for his devotee, kheer is the sweet rice, chora means thief, and Gopinath is Gopinath. This deity is now known as Shir Chor Gopinath. If you've ever been to Toronto, we have an ISKCON temple in Toronto, and those deities are Radha, Shir, Chor, Gopinath. So it's clear that when we're very devoted to the deity, the deity reciprocates. I'm already over. Wow. I guess we can now conclude for now. I guess we'll do a quick summary. There's 5 ways to connect to Krishna. The first is sadhu sangha, associating with devotees, chanting the holy name, reading Srimad Bhagavatam and other literatures about Krishna, going and living in holy places and worshiping the deity. So if we can do these things, we can successfully connect to Krishna. Hare Krishna. Vanchaka patadubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Hare Krishna.
Should we go to Aarti now? Or do we have time for questions? Okay. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.